Hey guys, welcome back with another episode of What If Naruto Was Neglected by His Family and Become Golden Dragon. This is part 1, and sorry for late part of this series, so if you want more of this, then please do like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves and what most call the strongest hidden village of the elemental nations. Many great heroes had come from this village, all changing the world with their power. To most it was a paradise where people could be happy to live the lives they wanted under the protection of ninja and the great Yadaime Hokage, but among every paradise lied hidden secrets. In the late hours of twilight with the residents of Konoha still safe and sound in their bed, a noise was heard. In the back alley between houses a small figure could be seen curled up inside a box. The figure was a boy no older than 6 years old with a very cute face. His golden blonde hair sprayed out in messy unkempt spikes that looked like he had just rolled out of bed, and his eyes were a deep sapphire blue so much they looked like the stones themselves. On each of his cheek were 3 birthmarks that seemed to give the boy whiskers. This boy's name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the young son of the current Hokage Minato Namikaze. Many would wonder, since he was the son of the Hokage, what he was doing in a box sleeping in an alleyway. Naruto played on his side, his eyes filled with tears as he held a small red plushy dragon close to his chest and tried to stop himself from outright crying at his situation. He wanted to still be strong, but he found he was having a hard time as he thought over how he ended up in a situation like this. Naruto was born 6 years previously on a cool night of October 10. He and his 2 twin sisters Naruko and Mito had all been born about the same time, and for the new family of 5, it was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. However, fate played a cruel hand as on that very night the most powerful of the tailed beast, the 9-tailed fox, attacked the Hidden Leaf village. Minato, as well as the rest of the shinobi force, rushed to meet it in a fierce battle lasting for hours. Seeing no other option, Minato prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice and seal the beast away. Flashback, it's too strong, a ninja yelled as the fox swiped one of its tail across the forest, uprooting trees by the sheer force. Damn it kid, we need to bring that thing down now, Jiraiya the Toad Sage said as he and Minato stood on top of the boss summon of the Toad's Gamabunta. I know, I just wish there was another way, Minato said as he looked down at the sleeping form of his 2 newborn daughters. He knew after tonight, he would never get to see them and his son Naruto grow up and be heroes. There is Minato, give them to me, a voice said behind him, making him turn. Standing behind him in his black ninja gear was the 3rd Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi with a grim but determined look. Sensei, what are you doing here? Jiraiya asked, shocked to see his teacher. Doing my final duty to the village. Minato, you have a family you think of and a village to lead. I'm old and have done so much for the village that it seems only fitting I go out in glory, Sarutobi said as he took the young children out of Minato's arms. Minato wanted to protest against it, saying he still had so much to offer the village, but he stopped when he saw the look in the old man's eyes, a look of determination and almost happiness, as his chance to do one final job for his village, which caused Minato to nod. Well, keep the best contained, he told the old Hokage, who nodded and flashed off. Arriving at the spot where the beast was being held down by seals thanks to Minato, Sarutobi set the 2 small girls on stone pedestals he created with a justu and began to flash through a series of hand signs, while Jiraiya, Minato, and Gamabunta kept the beast still. Sealing jutsu. Reaper Death Seal, the old Hokage yelled as he pressed his hands to the ground. A large seal formed under the fox and began to drain it of its energy, splitting it in half, with each going to one of the 2 girls who began to cry from being woke up. The 9 tails thrashed and desperately tried to free itself, but it was all for naught as soon the energy was too much, and it disappeared with a final roar and a flash of crimson, and 2 identical seals appeared on the girls. With his final act done, Sarutobi smiled and willingly let his soul fall into the waiting mouth of the Shinigami before it disappeared, leaving only silence in its wake. Minato walked over and kneeled down to the old Hokage and paid his respects before picking up his girls. I promise Sarutobi I'll honor your sacrifice, he said before flashing back to the hospital. Flashback over. After that day the village rebuilt itself and life returned to normal. The trio of kamikaze children grew and the family became whole. But, slow things began to change for the family of 5. The girls, regarded as heroes for having the fox sealed inside them, were praised and showered with admiration and love, while Naruto remained in the backdrop, always happy for his sisters, but soon began to feel left out. Slowly the family began to forget Naruto was even around. It started out small, like not calling him right away for dinner, or simply not noticing he was in the room, but gradually it became more and more until they didn't even remember he was in the house or with them if they went out on family outings. The final straw was on this night when the girls celebrated their 6th birthday, being showered with love and presents from their friends and other members of the various clans. Naruto didn't even bother coming downstairs, as no one even knew he was there. He no longer could take it, and that night, with nothing more than the clothes on his back and the small dragon he had received back on his 2nd birthday, and one of the last few good memories he snuck out his window and disappeared into the night. As these thoughts played out in Naruto's head, he never noticed a shadow moving outside the alleyway he was in, nor did he see the warm amber eyes turn into the alley and seem him. Naruto was pulled out of his thoughts with a gasp when he heard a noise coming from outside his box and scooted in, closing his eyes and whimpered, thinking someone had come to hurt him. "It's alright, little one, you don't have to be afraid," a soft voice said gently as a hand was placed on his shoulder to throw away some of the fright. Slowly the boy opened his eyes and glanced out. The figure outside his box was an impressive sight. She was a female standing about a mid-easily 61 with long flowing silver hair reaching her shoulders and tied up in a ponytail. Her eyes were amber and seemed to have a warm glow around them. She was wearing an interesting mix of clothes. Over her chest was a black leotard with red spirals and patterns sewn into the fabric. Her lower half was covered by a battle skirt of the same design, with black spandex shorts under it. Her legs had armor on them and black armored ninja sandals to keep them safe. The leotard had armored sleeves as well, with metal-plated fingerless gloves on her hand, and over it all was a silver trench coat that reached down to her feet and had an icy blue fire design similar to his father's. "Who are you?" he asked in a small voice, still showing he was scared, but that changed when he saw the warm motherly smile he gave him. "I should be asking you the same question, little one. Not every day you find such a cute little boy out here on the streets, but since you were polite, I'll introduce myself first. My name is Mira Kuritori," she said, crouching down to his level. "And my name is Naruto," he told her, making her gain a look of surprise. "Kushina's boy, what's he doing out here like this?" Mira thought. Her and Kushina were old friends from back in the academy days. "What are you doing out here so late, little one? Shouldn't you be at home with your family?" she asked him. However, the next words out of his mouth shocked her. "I don't have a family, they don't care about me, and don't even notice me," he said sadly, the tears returning. Hey, none of that now, little one," she said before giving him a thoughtful smile. "You know there is an easy way for that to be fixed," she said, making him look at her. "How?" he asked, and she could hear the hope in his voice. "How would you like to be a part of my family?" she asked him, making his eyes go wide. For a 6-year-old who had no family, how could he say no? She gave a small huff when his small body plowed into her with a tight hug, and he began to cry small happy tears. Smiling, she picked him up and carried him back to her home. Once they arrived, he was already asleep, so she took him to the spare bedroom and laid him down to sleep while she took care of a few things she needed to do. "Summoning jutsu," she said, placing her blood-stained palm to the ground, and a small poof of smoke appeared. When it vanished, it revealed amazingly a small dragon that stood on all fours and had copper-like scales with a messenger bag on his shoulder. It wasn't well known, but Mira was the unofficial 4th Sennin of the Leaf Village, given her title by Lady Tsunade herself for being the wielder of the dragon summon contract. "You called Mrs. Mira," the dragon said in a small voice. "Yes, Gaia, normally I wouldn't do this, but I need you to go to Konoha and have her forge some documents for me," she said, adding a small message to her bag. "And I ask why Mrs. Gaia asked. "I came across a boy tonight and wish to adopt him, however it will be tricky with who this boy is, so I need the right documents before I do," she explained. The small dragon gave a nod. "It will be done at once, Mom," the small dragon said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. With everything taken care of, she went to her room and undressed before turning in for the night. The next morning, Minato Namikaze sat in his office in the Hokage Tower, facing the most vile enemy of all, Cage, paperwork. He gave a sigh as he tiredly sorted through all the documents on his desk, trying hard to not fall asleep. He was still tired from his daughter's birthday party the night before, but knew he had to get this done. Something small nagged at the back of his mind, like he was forgetting something, but he shrugged it off and instead focused on the work until a knock was heard on his door. "Enter," he called out, not looking up. The door opened and Mira walked in with a small tired expression herself, as well as 2 cups of coffee. "Please tell me you're an angel and one of those is for me," he asked, looking up and smiling when he saw her. She just chuckled and handed him one. Minato had known Mira for quite some time. It was ironic he was friends with her because she was his wife's other rival, along with the Uchiha matriarch Motoko. The trio of girls had been best friends back in the days of the academy, always pushing each other and teasing each other because of their rivalry. When they grew up, they became fiercely protective of each other, each earning a nickname. For Kushina, it was the Red Hot Habanero, for Mikoto, the Flame Princess of Konoha, and for Mira, it was Konoha's Red Dragon Empress. Still battling the evils of paperwork, Mira asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Yes, one day I will discover the secret to taming this," he said with a voice full of passion which only made her laugh. "So what brings you here, Mira?" "I seriously doubt it was just to bring me coffee," he asked, making her set her drink down and pull out some paperwork. "Well, last night while I was out on my evening stroll, I came across a small child who was hiding in a back alleyway. Feeling compelled, I stopped and helped the boy and almost instantly fell in love with him, since he had quite the sad story of his parents neglecting him for his sisters, so I came here today to finalize adoption papers," she said, surprising Minato as he didn't even know there was a child like that in his village. Taking the papers, he looked them over and saw that everything was in order, including what needed to be known about the boy. The only thing that wasn't there is a photo. "How come there isn't a picture?" he asked. "He wasn't registered in the archive, so I was unable to find him, and I couldn't take one this morning, with a little cutie still fast asleep," she said, smiling. "Well, besides that, everything else is signed and sealed. Just get us a photo sometime soon so we can add him to the archives," Minato said, taking a stamp and sealing it with his approval, making her smile. "Will do. Also, I don't think he'll be enrolling him in the academy. He doesn't seem to do well around others besides me right now, so I'm thinking of taking him on one of my training trips," she explained. Much like how Jiraiya left the village with his traveling rights, Mira sometimes let the village to go out into the world and train, so this wasn't so much of a shock to the Hokage. "How long do you plan to leave?" he asked. "No later than 6 years, just around the time he would graduate from the academy anyway, and this way when I return with him he'll be ready to be placed on a squad," she said. He nodded and smiled. "Alright then, just make sure to write when you get the chance. I doubt Kushina is going to take it well if you don't send her some letters or something," he said, making her laugh. "Will do, Flash," she said before walking out the door and out the building. Sunlight filtered softly in between the cracks of the curtains as Naruto gave a small groan and rolled over to try and keep it out of his eyes. Slowly he began to wake up and realized he wasn't in the box he had been the night before and sat up. Looking around, he saw he was in a modest bedroom, painted the color of sunset, which was his favorite color. So it wasn't a dream, he thought, as a glorious smell hit his nose, making his mouth water. Jumping out of bed, he rushed down the hall following his nose when he found the kitchen. Standing by the oven was the woman who saved him last night, Mira, and she was cooking breakfast. "Well, good morning, little one. Go ahead and get comfy, the food is almost done," she said, smiling as he took a spot at the table nervously. He smiled when she came back and set down a plate filled with all kinds of breakfast foods in front of him, and his mouth watered. Waiting until she sat down, he thanked her and dug into the food with gusto, making her laugh. "Slow down, little one, you'll give yourself a tummy ache," she said, making him slow down. For 10 minutes all there was the sound of eating, and finally when it was done Naruto sighed happily. "Thank you very much, MRS," he said, smiling. She nodded and took the dishes and began to clean them. As she did, he remembered what they had talked about last night. MRS Mira, did you mean what you said when you said I could be a part of your family?" he asked, half hoping it was true. "Of course I did, in fact," she said, setting down the adoption paperwork and showing him that officially he was her son. He grinned ear to ear until he noticed something that confused him. "Hey, why is my name Tenzo? My name is Naruto," he asked, making her chuckle. "Because you're my son now and I thought it seemed appropriate that since you got a new name to match your new home," she said. Being 6 he didn't mind so much and actually kind of liked the name. "Okay mama, the now named Tenzo," said, smiling, and she sniffed happily and hugged him when he called her mama. "Oh my sweet little boy," she said, smiling. She was a mother now and it excited her. Soon she pulled away and ruffled his hair. Checking the time, she nodded. "Now then, I have something to tell you, sweetie. You want to be a ninja, don't you?" she asked, making him nod his head frantically. He wanted so badly to get strong and be a cool ninja. "Well, today you start that journey. You and I will be leaving the village for a couple of years, and I will be training you out in the real world about how to be a shinobi, alright," she said. He was nervous at first since he didn't know if he truly wanted to leave the village or if he was ready to do something like that. However, once he looked at his mama and realized she would be there to protect him and help him get strong, he smiled and hugged her. "Okay mama," he said, making her hug back again. She smiled and stood before going to get dressed. "Come on then, let's get you cleaned up. We have something to do before we leave," she said as they went to get ready. An hour later, Tenzo stood at the entrance of the gate of Konoha, checking over his things like his mother had told him to. Seeing how they would be leaving, she decided to get him some proper ninja wear. That did include his favorite orange color, but not something as ridiculous as a bright orange tracksuit. Tenzo was now wearing a black form-fitting shirt with orange swirls on each arm, a set of armored black pants that were similar to what the Anbu pants. He had black shinobi sandals on that Mira added a bit more armor, plating too to keep his feet protected. On either side of his pants was a kunai holder, and he had a dark blue pouch on the back of his belt full of shuriken ninja wire and a few odds and ends he had packed for him. To complete the look, his mother had bought him a coat similar to her own, but it was midnight black with an orange dragon head stamped dead center of the coat. "All set, sweetie?" Mira asked, having just finished checking over her own things. Her pouches and holders were a bit bigger for more weapons, and on her back, she had a large Adachi-style sword strapped to her back over her coat, and an equally large scroll that was golden in color, with silver etching on it, and a dragon head stamped on the front. This was the dragon summon contract. "Yeah mom, I'm all ready," he said, happily bouncing over to her. She had already told him she would make him a great ninja, and now seeing her in full ninja attire, he knew he one day would be just like her. "Well then let's get going," she said, turning and showing her paper to the gate guard before the two walked out of the massive gate and into the woods. Turning back one final time, Tenzo looked at his home and with determination thought, "I promise I will get stronger, strong enough for you to all know my name, and so my family remembers me, just you wait Konoha," he thought with determination before turning back and caught up with his mother as the two began their new journey into the unknown. "Began Naruto, you have to keep practicing if you want to get stronger," Mira said as she crossed her arms and looked down at the panting form of her son. 3 years had passed since she had found Naruto in that back alleyway, and they had left the village in order to train Naruto so he could become stronger and a proper shinobi, and much had changed in the years that had followed. Though on paper his name was Tenzo, Mira never called him that unless they were around other people. He understood why, since they didn't want a Leaf shinobi finding out about him and taking him back to the Leaf village when he didn't want to, but when they were in private, she always referred to him as Naruto. To also be safe, she had taught him a special henge jutsu that could only be preformed by those of the dragon summons that allowed the user to change certain physical traits of his appearance as long as he was bonded with a dragon familiar, which he was. Naruto looked up at his mom and panted with a smile on his face. Overall, he had gotten some looks from the last 3 years of training. He now stood at a respectable 53, which was good for someone of his age, and he had gained a decent amount of muscle tone. His skin still had the tan, only now it was a touch darker from all the traveling they did. His face had changed the most due to the henge, although he only had it on when they were in public. When he did, he no longer had his whisker birthmarks, and one of his eyes was now light amber similar to his mother as a small connection to her, and his hair was half black and half blonde. Currently the mother and son were in the woods of the Land of Fire, having left a small town a day ago, and decided to stop and do some training. With Naruto still somewhat to preform justice past the 3 basic academy jutsus she had shown him, they mainly focused on his taijutsu and kinjutsu. Mira made a point to teach him her style of fighting known as the Dragon Knight style. It combined a mix of high-speed martial arts, used to strike at key spots quickly and accurately, similar to the Hyuga's gentle fist style, but with no chakra, and added heavy and devastating swordsman style for facing any kind of opponent. "Sure thing mom," Naruto said, jumping back to his feet with a determined look on his face. He had started calling her mom full-time 2 years ago. "Now then, remember what I showed you. You have to be quick on your feet and never let your opponent know where you're going to be coming from next," Mira said, dropping into the basic stance of the style. Naruto nodded and copied her before he rushed forward. His speed had increased leaps and bounds due to the runs and exercises his mother made him do, so he had the momentum and stamina for the style. He blurred forward, striking low to her stomach, only for her to block with her fist and send a jab to his shoulder. He bent away from it and sent another strike for her stomach, trying to stagger her and knock her off her feet. The blow connected, making her grunt, and using what small advantage he had, Naruto got around behind her and slammed an elbow into her back to send her staggering forward. Mira smirked a bit as she rightened herself and turned to face her son, only to see he wasn't there. Confused, she looked around until she heard the sound of leaves shuddering and looked up. Naruto fell from the tree he had raced up quickly and dropped down, slamming a foot into her head and knocking her to the ground. Naruto panted for a second before grinning widely and laughed. "I got you mom, I finally got you," admitted, he said, doing a small victory dance. Mira laughed a bit as she pulled herself out of the dirt and smiled at him. "Yes you did Naruto, and I am very proud of you," she said, smiling. "But remember, just because you beat me does not mean you have the style mastered. You are indeed getting better with the basic stances, meaning it will soon become time for you to move on to the intermediate, and I promise you that will be a whole lot tougher," she said in a firm voice. He nodded and smiled. "I'm ready mom, I made a promise to get stronger, and nothing is gonna stop me from doing it, you just watch," he cheered in his usual hyperactive tone that made her laugh whenever he did. "Alright mister, go get yourself cleaned up and then come back so we can have lunch, we'll continue training after that, alright," she said. "Sure thing mom," he said before jogging off a bit deeper into the woods to a stream they had made their camp by. He stripped out of his training clothes, leaving him in just his shorts before jumping into the water and settled into the stream. It wasn't a hot bath at a hotel or anything, but he and his mother rarely stayed fully in towns since they had a love for camping out in the wild. His mom said that it was because they were free spirits and didn't like to be in one place for so long, plus that also helped them avoid any Leaf shinobi in case they were looking for him. As Naruto played against the bank of the river, he couldn't help but stop and think about how much his life had changed since his mom had come into his life. So many amazing things had happened with her, helping him get stronger, and some of the adventures the two of them had over the course of the years of training. He smiled with his eyes shut until he heard a noise. His eyes snapped open as he looked around and heard a high-pitched scream coming from close by that sounded slightly feminine. His eyes turned a bit hard as he jumped out of the water and threw the spare clothes he had brought with him on before racing towards where the scream had come from. Pushing past branches and shrubs, he soon came across a clearing and saw a group of people in it. Not wanting to risk it, he stopped and hid in a nearby bush. Quickly he flashed through a set of three-hand signs. Dragon persona transformation jutsu. He whispered as he used the jutsu that changed his appearance to his more publicly known self and peeked out to see what was going on. In the clearing, a group of large men holding weapons were surrounding a small figure with looks that disgusted him. He had seen looks like that before on some of the bandits that had tried to attack him and his mom. But what truly caught his attention was the figure in between them. In the middle of the group was a small girl no older than maybe 12 or 13. Her hair was a violet purplish color that was short but messy, kind of similar to his own, and was tied up almost like the stem of a pineapple in the back. Her eyes were a darkish brown color and were filled with fear of the men. She didn't seem to have much as far as clothing, just a brown overshirt and tan skirt. She didn't look the healthiest either. She was thin, and her body looked like she had taken a beating. A burning rage appeared inside Naruto as he saw the group. He despised people like the men who only hurt others and did it for their own sick pleasure. Taking a breath, he calmed himself before closing his eyes. "Aka, I need you to send a message to mom. I found a group of bandits not too far from camp who are hurting someone and plan to keep them busy until she gets here," he mentally said. "Don't worry Naruto, I'm on it," a small voice replied. That was Taka, Naruto's dragon familiar, which his mom had summoned from Jigokuyama-1, the great home of the dragons, to keep himself and allow him to use the dragon persona jutsu. But that done, Naruto took a breath and stepped out of the bushes. "Hey, leave her alone," he shouted at the bandits, making them look at him and smirk. "Well, what do we got here? A little punk trying to play here?" one of them sneered as the others laughed. "What should we do with him, Jacobo?" another asked. "I say we gut him quick and then take the girl back to the boss," the third said, and the others laughed and nodded in agreement. "Well kid, looks like it's your unlucky day," the leader of the group said and advanced on the kid. Naruto growled and instinctively dropped into the opening kata for the Dragon Knight style before rushing forward and slamming a fist into the advancing bandits, stomach making him cough and spit up some bile before falling back. Not giving his attackers a chance to retaliate, he rushed forward and drove his fists in a series of punches into the second largest stomach before using him as a springboard and kicked the other in the face, surprisingly hard enough to knock him cold. "You little shit," one yelled, trying to cut him with his sword. Naruto moved out of the way of each slash and roundhouse kicked him in the face before turning his sights to the last one still standing. The bandit looked terrified and turned to run away, only to be slashed in half by Mira with a dachi in hand. "Nice work, sweetie, you handled that quite well," she said. He smiled big again before remembering the girl and ran over to her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, stopping in front of her. The girl didn't know what to say. 1 minute she had been scared for her life at what the bandits prepared to do to her, when the next thing she known, this black-haired boy had come out of nowhere and faced down the bandits, bringing them down one by one and saving her. She looked into his mismatched eyes and felt a small stir in her chest that she could identify. Yeah, I'm okay, just some scrapes and bruises," she told him before noticing the lady walk over to them. "It's dangerous to be out here all by yourself. Your parents must be worried sick," Mira said, making the girl look down sadly. "I don't have any parents, they died when I was a baby," she told her sadly. Unable to stop, Mira crouched down and gave the girl a much needed hug, which she returned. "What's your name, sweetie?" Mira asked in her mother voice that seemed to ease the girl. "Anko, my name is Anko Mitarashi," Anko told Mira. "So what is it that you're doing out here?" Mira asked. Anko looked down again and began to tell them the tale of her sensei Orochimaru and how he had abandoned her after using her in an experiment for his cursed seal of heaven. By the end of it, Mira was fuming with the urge to find the pale bastard and make herself a pair of snakeskin boot. Calming herself, she looked at Anko and smiled again. "Come on Anko, why don't you come back to camp with us and have something to eat?" Mira said. Anko looked up at her hopefully and nodded. "Oh, and before I forget, my name is Mira Kuritori, and this is my son Naruto," Mira said, and Naruto smiled and dropped a hint, shocking Anko, but decided to wait till they were safe to ask questions. With that done, the trio left back for the camp. Later on in the day, as the sun began to grow lower in the sky, Naruto, Mira and Anko all sat around a fire having just finished lunch, and Naruto told his story to the purple-haired girl. To say she was shocked and outraged was an understatement, as Anko ranted about it for a good 10 minutes afterwards. "So what do we do now?" Anko asked, looking at the mother and son. "Well, there are a few options regarding what you want to do. The first and simple is we can drop you off at a town that is not too far from here with some money, so you can get some supplies and head back to the Hidden Leaf village," Mira said. Anko had told them she was a genin under Orochimaru, and the only reason she hadn't been able to fight today was because her chakra reserves were still exhausted from the curse mark she had received only 2 days prior, but now were slowly recharging. "What's the other options?" Anko asked. She didn't feel like going back to the village yet. "You can come with us," Naruto said, happily confusing her. "My son and I are on a training trip and have been for the last 3 years. If you want, we still plan to stay out here for another 3, and we have enough supplies that if a third wanted to join us, we won't have much trouble," Mira offered. Anko was stunned by the various generous offer that Mira was giving her, and for a moment she was tempted to say yes. However, her past with Orochimaru saying the same thing tainted these sort of offers for her and made her narrow her eyes a bit. "And how do I know you won't just use me like that damn white snake did?" she said in a tone with a slight edge to it. "Don't worry, Anko, my mom is really nice. She saved me from being alone, and she could do the same for you," Naruto said, placing a hand on her shoulder and made her look at him. She could see the truth in his eyes, and after hearing his story about what she did for him, Anko had no doubt the same treatment would be given to her. "Okay, but is it alright if I train with you as well?" she asked curiously. She wanted to get stronger and eventually kill Orochimaru, and she was hoping that Mira could make her strong like she was doing with Naruto. "Of course I can. You won't be able to sign the dragon contract, however, as you already have a contract with the snakes. However, the two species get along decently well, so we shouldn't have any problems," Mira said, making Anko almost jump for joy when she heard she could get trained like Naruto. "Thank you so much, I promise I won't let you down," Anko said. "Alright, now you two, lunch is over, it's time to get back to work," Mira said, standing. "Right." They both yelled, jumping to their feet ready to begin. Hours later, after the sun had left the sky and the moon had come out, Naruto, Anko and Mira were asleep around a small campfire warming them in the night. The rest of the day had been hard for the two children of the group, seeing how Naruto had begun using the weight training needed to move his Dragon Fist style up to the next level, as well as begin to train with his elemental affinity, which they had found out was a strong wind type, so she had also given him the beginning exercise to hone wind elemental chakra. Anko was faring no better throughout the day, as Mira made her show her all the jutsus and taijutsu stances that she could preform to get a grasp on the younger girl's power level. Once that was done, like Naruto, they had discovered her affinity for fire, which made sense as during the training Anko's normal slightly sadistic personality had begun to return, which Mira found slightly amusing and Naruto scary. Once it was discovered, she gave her the basic fire exercise. Naruto rolled over in his sleep bag and gave a yawn as he slowly woke up. The call of nature was yelling in his ears as he sat up to go to the bathroom. Getting out of his sleeping bag, he went to a nearby tree and did his business before hearing some rustles in the bushes. "Who's there?" he said semi-loud, not wanting to wake up his mom and Anko in case it was a simple squirrel. Still, he did slip into the dragon stances once again. The rustles stopped and he looked around, nervous like he was being watched, and the air hung silent, making him all the more tense. Then everything burst to life as a loud series of yells was heard, waking the girls. Out of the bushes and trees came a whole horde of bandits that quickly surrounded them and wore victorious looks on their faces. "Well, look who it is," a bandit said, which Naruto recognized as one of the bandits from earlier. "That's them, boss," another yelled as a large man wearing fancy robes and fatter than a hippo stepped forward with a smug look. "So you're the trio who roughed up my boys earlier? Well, I can't be having that," the boss said, making the others laugh as he stepped forward and grabbed Anko's chin. "Why don't you punks make this easy on yourselves and just give up? We'll take you two women and put you to good use," he said, making Anko growl and the bandits laugh harder. However, that laugh slowly got smaller as the area around them was slowly building with killer intent. The boss stumbled away from Anko as he was knocked away by Mira, who had a deadly look in her eye and her adachi already drawn. "You come into my camp, threaten my son and his friend, wake me up from my sleep, and then have the balls to demand I give myself to you," she said in a slow, even tone as the killer intent increased. "Naruto, Anko, the two of you stay here. I'm gonna have a chat with this trash," she said before flashing forward faster than anyone could see and sliced the boss in half with one swing. After a stunned few moments, the floodgates opened as every bandit moved to attack them. Mira danced through the ranks, hacking of limbs and heads and piercing anyone else with her sword. Some of the bandits thought it would be smart to attack Anko and Naruto to try and get a bargaining chip on the lady that was cutting down their ranks like wheat. However, this proved better on paper than in practice, as the two defended themselves quite well, with Anko using her striking shadow snakes and senbon needles, which Naruto became a blur of fists of fury as he pushed his taijutsu style to its limits and the limits of his body. As the number dwindled down, Naruto began to grow confident they would all make it out of this when he saw something out of the corner of his eye Anko had her back turned as she took down a bandit with her snakes, and a second one was creeping up behind her with the intent to spear her through the gut with his sword. He didn't think, he just reacted as he whipped a kunai out of his holster and threw it before he had time to think, and blood flew through the air. He stood there choked as he saw the bandit choke with the kunai jammed in his neck and looked eyes with him for a second before he fell limp to the ground dead. The last of the bandits had been cleaned up by his mother, who turned and saw the scene. Naruto remained frozen for a few more seconds before his stomach churned and he rushed to the nearest bush and threw up. Mira appeared by his side and rubbed his back as he continued to throw up and tears leaked from his eyes. I killed him, and I did it in cold blood, Naruto said, starting to break down before his mom pulled him into a tight hug. Look at me, Naruto, look at me, she said, gently making him into her eyes. Yes, you killed him, but you did not do it in cold blood. If you hadn't, then he would have killed Anko, and then possibly you. I know it is a bad thing, but we are shinobi, Naruto, and that means that there will be times when we have to kill. But there is a reason we kill: to protect our home, our friends, and our family, and make sure people like them, she said, pointing to the bandits. Don't not get a chance to hurt others, she said. He sniffed and seemed to calm down at her words. He knew being a shinobi meant he had to take a life at some point, but he never figured it would be like this. Still, his mother's words have stopped him from breaking down and made him calm down. He gave her a nod before resting his head on her shoulder. Anko, are you okay? Naruto asked her just to be safe. He didn't want to see her hurt. I'm fine, Naruto, I promise, she told him, looking only a bit shaken from the attack. She had taken bandit lives before during her training with Orochimaru, so something like this didn't bug her as much. Come on you two, let's pack up our things. We'll find a new camping spot for the night, Mira said, having them roll up their sleeping bags. Once everything was packed, they set out on a quick run away from the scene of death. They ran for 20 or so minutes until they found another small clearing and set up camp again. Once everything was done, they went back to sleep. However, for the rest of the night, Naruto stayed close to Anko as she slept, determined to keep his new friend safe from any harm that came at them on the road ahead. A year had passed since the fateful day Anko had joined the mother and son, and things between them had become quite exciting. The duo were good friends and always by each other's side, whether it be to keep each other safe or simply to push the other to train harder. Their individual training had come along nicely as well, with Naruto having already mastered the first step of wind manipulation, and even so far as to master a C-rank wind just by the name of Gale Palm, which gave the user a smokescreen to allow them to escape. His Taijutsu was already beyond what the standard Taijutsu style of Konoha was, with him deep in the intermediate level and having the stamina and speed to match it, thanks to the weight training he constantly was under. Anko hadn't been slouching either, with her working tirelessly to master the snake style of Taijutsu and progress in her fire manipulation. Being older, she had been given some extra leeway from Mira and already knew 2 C-rank fire jutsus, Fireball Jutsu and Phoenix Flower Jutsu, as well as her striking shadow snakes and summoning contract. All in all, she was a force to be reckoned with. Currently, the trio were in the tourist town of Tenzaku quarters to take a break from training and enjoy the festival that was happening at the time. Mira had gone off to book them a room, while Anko and Naruto, now 14 and 10, respectively, wandered around the village looking at the sights and shops. Hey Anko, check this out, Naruto said as he found a stall that sold masks and bought himself one that gave him the look of a dragon. Yes Naruto, you're freaking obsessed with dragons, you know that, Anko said with a laugh, even though she found it kind of cute. Of course I'm obsessed with dragons. Hello, my mom summons dragons, and I have a freaking dragon familiar. Besides, I bet if we found you something snake related, you would be jumping all over it, Naruto said, smirking until Anko hit him on the back of the head. Oh shut up moron, she said, turning away to hide a small blush of embarrassment. Naruto smirked as he picked himself up and paid for the mask. So what do you want to do? He asked her as they kept walking. I don't really know. Why don't we play some games or something until sensei gets us the room? Anko suggested with a shrug, though Mira had tried over and over again to just have Anko by her first name. The snake girl couldn't get into the mindset and just stuck with calling her sensei. I don't know, most of these games are either just random luck for gambling or rigged, so you can't get any of the prizes and just blow money on them, Naruto said, seeing right through the scams that people had. You're probably right, but don't forget that we're ninja in training, so think of this like practice, Anko said with a small smirk. Naruto had learned to be wary of that smirk, as it usually led them to trouble. You sure this is a good idea? He asked wary. Course I am, now come on, we have some people to beat, she said as they walked towards the games. As it turned out, Naruto had been right about most of the games being rigged, especially the ones where people could win money as the prizes. However, that didn't stop Anko and Naruto from cheating their butts off. Naruto mostly focused on the luck games since his mom and Anko had said he had the luck of the devil, and Anko, being the clever girl she was, cheated on most of the physical games by using her ninja training, thus letting the two rack up the bucks. By the time the two were making their way out of the game area, they had easily made over 2,000 bunks and were smirking like crazy. However, that would be when their luck ran out. Hey. A voice yelled behind them, making them stop and turn back nervously. Behind them were all the owners of the stalls they hit, and they did not look happy. "Something we can help you with, fellas," Anko said, trying and failing to act innocent towards the group. Naruto just smiled nervously and began to back up slowly. "We know the two of you cheated on our game, so hand over the money," the lead guy said, as the others seemed to just pull weapons of various sorts out of thin air. Naruto and Anko looked at each other, then the crowd, chuckling nervously and scratching their heads. They seemed to consider that option for a moment, then turned tail and ran at high speeds down the road. "Get them," the shop owner yelled as the stall people chased after the duo, intent on getting their money back. "I told you something like this would happen," Naruto yelled to Anko as they yelled and ran for their lives, the crowd slowly gaining on them. "Just shut up and run, moron," she yelled back as they ran through the twists and turns of the city. Mira meanwhile had just stepped out of the hotel the trio would be staying at to go and find the kids. When she heard the sounds of yelling getting close to her and looked down the street, she looked just in time to see Anko and Naruto turn down the street and run high-tail towards her, with an angry mob of some kind right on their tails. "Kids, what did you two do?" she yelled, clearly shocked and angry about this. "No time to talk, mom," Naruto yelled as he ran past. "We'll be back here as soon as we lose these guys," Anko yelled as they ran down the road, the mob by now having passed Mira. After they left, Mira looked down the way they came with her eyebrow twitching as she faced Palm. "They are ninja and training and should know better by now, so this time I won't be bailing them out," Mira said as she turned and walked the other way, fully intending to find the nearest hot spring and forget this whole thing ever happened. She would retrieve what was left of them later. As Naruto and Anko rounded another corner, they knew by now they were starting to get tired, even with all the training they had done. This was getting ridiculous at how long this had been going on. "Damn, what are we gonna do, Anko?" Naruto yelled just as they rounded another corner. I'm thinking," she yelled back. "Well then allow me to solve the problem," a voice said behind them, confusing them until they yelled as they were grabbed by the collar from behind and pulled into a nearby restaurant. A hand was put over their mouths to stop them from yelling by surprise before they quieted as they heard the mob run by. "Well, that was a close call. The hell did a couple of kids do to get a mob running after them?" the man asked, letting them go and letting them get a look at him finally. The man was something to say the least, standing over them at least 62 with wild unkempt white hair that was almost similar to Naruto's in a way in terms of how it looked. However, he also had a trail of white hair and a ponytail running down his lower back. He had an older looking face with black eyes and red lines running from them like trails of blood. He had on gray standard shinobi gear under a red jacket and red wooden sandals on his feet. His hands had leather armor plates to protect him, and on his forehead was a protector with the kanji for oil on it and a large scroll of some kind hanging from his back, which both kids guessed was a summoning scroll. Naruto of course knew immediately who this guy was from all the time he had spent around the house back in Konoha and how he used to train his sisters. This was Jiraiya the Toad Sage. He looked at them and gave them a cocky smirk and placed his hand on his hips, waiting for them to speak and praise him a bit. "Who the hell are you?" Naruto asked, making Jiraiya and I'm fall on his face with a look of pure disbelief. "You don't know who I am?" he asked as if that was an unbelievable thing. "No, I asking for the sake of the doorway, of course I don't know who you are." He yelled the last part heavy with sarcasm, something he picked up from his mother. Jiraiya smirked and started doing some ridiculous dance. "I am the hermit of Mount Mayaboku, the wise and immortal spirit. I am Jiraiya the Toad Sage," he said, finishing and expecting them to be impressed. "Oh yeah, you're the frog pervert who likes to peep on women and call it research because he writes smut novels mom told us about," Naruto said in a deadpan voice that made Jiraiya and I'm full yet again. "I am not a pervert, I am a super pervert," he yelled, earning a disgusted look from every female in the restaurant and getting a kick right to the tender spot from Anko, making him double over in pain. "Kid, why would you hit there?" He got out past the pain. "Because anyone dumb enough to call themselves a super pervert in public deserves a good kick to the balls," she said shamelessly while Naruto was rolling on the ground laughing. After they all had recovered and Jiraiya was no longer in pain, they decided to sit down for a minute. "So you two never answered my question. What were a couple of kids doing running from a mob of angry villagers with weapons?" he asked them. "We may have gone to the gaming street of the festival and cheated them out of their cash," Anko said, rubbing the back of her head and expecting him to be upset, but to her surprise he started laughing. "Oh, that is just a good, an entire caravan of stalls robbed blind by a couple of gawkers," Jiraiya said as he laughed. After calming down he smiled at them. "So the two of you have names or what?" he asked. "Oh, my name is Anko Mitarashi," Anko told him. "And my name is Tenzo Kuritori," Naruto said, giving his fake name. But he didn't expect the reaction he got when Jiraiya nearly choked on his drink. Did you say your last name is Kuritori?" he asked, hitting his chest to be able to speak again. "Yeah, how come?" Naruto asked him, although he had an idea. His mom had told him that she was friends with Jiraiya and Tsunade after all. "Is your mother's first name Mira?" he asked, confirming Naruto's idea. "Yeah, she is. Why do you two know each other?" Naruto said, keeping up the act. "Hell yeah, she's an old friend of mine and I've been looking for her for a while. think you could take me to her?" Jiraiya asked. Anko and Naruto looked at each other for a moment debating on it before nodding their heads and leaving the restaurant. After getting the address of where their mother was from the hotel, the two kids lead Jiraiya to a hot spring where he sprouted a perverted look on his face as he went around to the women's side of the building and peeked in through the cracks, seeing Mira there soaking in the water. "Yeah, that's her alright," he said with a perverted giggle. "Dude, stop peeping on my mom," Naruto yelled. "Oh, relax kid," he said, going to again only to come face to face with Mira looking quite pissed. "Jiraiya, if you don't stop looking at me right now and wipe that perverted look off your face, I will summon Infernius and feed you to him," she said in a deadly calm voice that made him jump away in fright. After Mira had gotten dressed and come out, the group walked back to the hotel room so they could get a bit of privacy because she had a feeling Jiraiya needed to talk about something important to her. "So what is this all about?" she asked, sitting down on her bed while Anko and Naruto sat next to her. Jiraiya was on the other bed facing them. "You mind sending the kids out? This is kind of important," he asked, only to receive a glare from all three of them. "No Jiraiya, my children don't need to have secrets kept from them, so whatever you have to tell me you tell them as well," she said in a tone that dared him to argue with her. He sighed and looked at her. "Okay, here it is, myself, Tsunade, Minato, and Kushina need you to come back to the village." "Why?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. He looked at her and just from the look on his face, she could tell he was feeling guilty about something. "You remember Naruto, Kushina and Minato's son? Well, about 4 years ago now he ran away from the village and we have been trying to find him ever since," he said in a somber tone. "Why did he run away?" she asked, curious. Obviously she knew, but she wanted to see what Jiraiya said. "Listen, none of us are proud of this fact and we all have been beating ourselves up over it ever since. You know of course about Naruto and Mito being the containers of the nine-tailed fox. Well, for some years myself and the others have been getting the girls ready for when they become ninja and preparing them to be Jinchuriki. Unfortunately, in our sheer stupidity, none of us noticed Naruto slowly drifting away from the picture," Jiraiya said, wincing when he got hit on the back of the head. "Are you telling me you all neglected the poor boy?" she growled, clearly still mad about it even though she knew. "Yes we did, like I said, none of us are proud, in fact we're all feeling the shame of it, since by the time we realized he was already gone. Mira, everyone has been a wreck since his disappearance. Minato has thrown himself into his work and tries to do the best he can to fix his mistake, while having finding him be an ongoing B-rank mission. He wants his son back so much it's almost painful to watch. Tsunade has gotten into drinking hard after realizing what she did and no one can seem to break her out of it. Kushina has been the worst though, outside of myself, Minato, Tsunade and the girls she doesn't talk to many people and has been spending all her time helping the girls," he admits. "And why has she been doing that?" Mira asked. The girls have pretty much thrown themselves into training. They have put their heart and soul into getting stronger so they can one day find their brother and beg for forgiveness for how they pushed him away," Jiraiya admits, shocking the trio, especially Naruto. He had no idea the girls even would do something like that. "We all screwed up, Mira, trust me, we get that. Now we're trying to do everything we can to bring Naruto home and make up for every bonehead mistake we made. Please, we need you to come back and help us find him," Jiraiya said. Only now did she realize how bad he sounded. "You really all want to make it up to him this badly," she said, and he nodded. "Well, I'm sorry I can't come back home just yet. I still need to finish my son's training and we have another 2 years," she said. Before Jiraiya could protest, she stopped him. "However, I will use my dragons to try and find him, and if I do I will tell him what you told me and bring him home," she said, making him sigh in relief and nod. "Thank you, Mira, I know you're probably fuming at all of us," he said. "Oh, I am, and don't be surprised when I give Kushina and Minato a dragon-sized goose egg on their idiotic heads when I get back," she warned. "But I'm grateful for you doing this," he said before standing up. "I best get going. One of my contacts may have a lead I need to follow up on some other important business. I'll see you around hopefully," he said before leaving the room. Once she was sure he had left, Mira locked the door and looked at Naruto. "What do you think, sweetie?" she asked him. In truth, Naruto didn't know what to think. He had never dreamed that he would hear his parents actually missed him and wanted him to come back and that everyone, even his sisters, were doing everything they could to bring him home. "I guess I don't really know what I should think right now. I never even dreamed something like this would happen. But I don't know if it's too good to be true," he admitted. Mira came over and sat with them and both she and Anko gave him a hug. "I don't know right now if you should believe them or not, however that is not my choice and lies with you, so what is it right now you want to do?" Mira said. Naruto thought over it for a minute. On one hand he wanted to go back to Konoha and see if it was true, but at the same time he was hesitant it was a lie. After a moment he decided. "I think right now I want to finish my training trip with you, Mom, and then when we go back home I'll stay as Tenzo in public and find out if this is true or not," Naruto Naruto said, making Mira laugh and ruffle his hair. "That's my boy," she said, smiling. He was really starting to think like a true ninja now, and she was so proud of him. "Now come on you two, let's go enjoy the rest of the festival, and this time no mobs," she warned them. "Yeah, we got you, mom," Naruto said as he and Anko jumped off the bed and walked out of the room with her fully intent on seeing what the rest of the festival was like without them running through it being chased. The rest of the day was spent with the three of them goofing off and having a nice time while enjoying what they had of the festival. They even went to a local hot spring afterwards from family time. At night they sat on top of the hotel and watched a firework display that was going off above them, happy as could be. Soon the evening was done and they went back into their room and got ready for bed. After the lights went out, Anko and Mira went to sleep, but for a while, Naruto stayed up and thought over what he had been told by both his mom and Jiraiya. "They do care about me and want to make amends. I guess a lesser person would hold on to a grudge or something," he thought before smiling wide. "But I'm not like that. I'll keep getting stronger till I'm ready to show them, and when I do, if what they said was the truth, then I'll give them a second chance," he thought. But that final thought he drifted off to sleep. His final image before slipping off was of his old family and his new one sitting together as one, a dream he would one day make real. "Alright Naruto, listen up because today we begin the most critical piece of your training with the time we have left," Mira said, drawing the attention of her son. It had been roughly 6 months since the encounter with Jiraiya and startling realization of his family, trying to find him and make amends and looking for them. With only a year and a half left of their training, it was time to start working on the most critical and time-consuming piece of it. "So what are we working on, Mom?" he asked. He was excited to learn something new, as recently he had mastered the intermediate level of the Dragon Knight style and learned another C-rank wind jutsu by the name of Great Breakthrough. He was ready to start on something else. "And is it something I can learn?" Anko asked out of curiosity. Like Naruto, she had been training like crazy and had nearly mastered her snake style Taijutsu and was now just working on refining it. She had also added a third C-rank fire jutsu, Fire Bullet, to round out everything. "Sadly Anko, this is something I cannot teach you as it requires something very special. Naruto, it's finally time for you to sign the Dragon Summoner contract," Mira said, slipping the large scroll off her back and laying it down in front of him. Naruto's eyes widened as he stared in wonder at the large scroll. He had been dreaming for years now of adding his name to it and finally becoming a proper dragon summoner, and now the day had finally arrived. "You sure, Mom?" he asked, half believing it was a dream. The answer, she unrolled the scroll to a blank spot and showed it to him. "Dead sure, sweetie, your name will join those on here so that one day you can leave a mark on history as well," she said. Naruto nodded, excited, and listened as his mom explained to write his name in blood before pressing his dominant hand under it. Biting his thumb to draw blood, Naruto quickly wrote down his name and stamped his hand before the scroll rolled up, and Mira picked it back up. "Well done, Naruto," she said, knowing the dragons had accepted his name. "Welcome to the Summon Club, Naru," Anko said, using the nickname she had made for him. "Now then, there is only one thing left to do," she said, and quickly bit her thumb and drew blood. Flashing through some hand signs, she swiped the blood on the ground. "Reverse summon jutsu," she said, and the usual summon circle appeared, only instead of a dragon appearing out of the smoke they vanished into it. Naruto had shut his eyes and coughed when the smoke had surrounded him, waving it out of his eyes until he could open them and see. When he did, he was shocked at what he saw. They were no longer in the forest that had been moments ago, was now replaced by the scene of mountain peaks spread out before him. "Wow," he said, taking it all in. "Indeed. Welcome to Dorrigan Plusku, the home of the great dragon clan," Mira said, making him turn to see her and Anko looking the other way. In front of them on top a mountain peak was a grand castle seemingly built into the side of the mountain, and it was massive, so big it could easily fit the Leaf Village in it 3 times. "Come, we have to meet the king of the mountain and begin the last step of you becoming a summoner," Mira said, leading the way. They began walking for an hour until they came to a large stone bridge 3 times bigger than anything they had seen. After crossing it, they arrived at a set of massive double doors and 2 blue-scaled dragons guarding them. "Halt. Who goes there?" one yelled, seeing them. "I am Mira Kuritori, Dragon Summoner, and I have come to speak with Lord Infernus," she said in a voice that almost demanded respect from those who heard it. The dragons bowed their heads when she said her name. "Forgive us, milady, we did not recognize you. You have changed much since you last visited the mountain," he said, and the 2 opened the doors for them. When they walked inside, Naruto and Anko were in awe at the sheer sight before them. They stood in the middle of a massive throne room with dragons of all shapes, sizes and colors coming and going. Some walked on 4 legs and other 2. Some carried weapons or scrolls or wore ceremonial armor. However, the true sight was in front of them. At the head of the room, sitting on a throne made of stone and gold, stood a red dragon at least as tall as the Hokage monument in the village. His scales were a crimson red, and he wore golden samurai armor on his chest, shoulders, arms, knees and legs, giving him the appearance of a seasoned warrior. He stood on 2 legs with a red and gold helmet sitting next to him, along with the largest katana they had ever seen. This was Infernus, the Sun Samurai, the leader of the Dragon Clan, and the person summon of Mira. "Mira, it has been too long since you returned to the mountain," Infernus said after he saw them and stood. His voice was old and powerful. yet had an air of grandfatherly wisdom. Good to see you as well, Infernus. Sorry I haven't had much need to call you into battle as of late, Mira said smirking. Ah, worry nothing of it, I understand you don't need to call me every time. Now I take it by the fact I was just informed a new summoner has signed the contract. This isn't a social visit for drinks, Infernus said. You would be correct, she said before moving Naruto so he was in front of her. This is my adopted son Naruto. He has just signed the contract, and I request you allow him to face the trials to become a full summoner, Mira said. Infernus leaned down and inspected the boy, giving Naruto a sniff here or there. For the most part the blonde stayed calm and still, although that could be just because he was freaking out about being in the presence of a titanic dragon that could eat him and not even feel full. I can smell a strong amount of chakra in him, not to mention he already has a familiar in my grandson Taka. Very well, if he so chooses he may take the trials to become a summoner, Infernus said. Excuse me Mr. Infernus, what exactly are these trials I have to take? Naruto asked, half curious half nervous about the answer. The trials are a test of the mind, body and soul to see if you have the requirements needed to be a true wielder of our clan. No two summoners ever face the same trial, so I cannot tell you definitively what they will be. However, be warned boy, should you fail these trials, you will never be accepted as a full dragon summoner, and as such will never be able to summon any dragon at all, Infernus explained. Naruto looked conflicted at the news of this. Not only was he going off into the unknown to face these trials, but if he failed them then he could never be their summoner and probably disappoint his mother. Still though, something inside him was burning bright, encouraging him not to be afraid and telling him he could pass whatever they threw at him. Alright then Lord Infernus, bring it on, I'll face whatever you throw at me and prove I can overcome it and keep going forward, Naruto yelled with a determined smile on his face and a confident look in his eye. Infernus reared up and gave a deep bellow of a laugh. I must say Mira, you may have adopted the boy, but he certainly has your spunk and guts. Very well then Naruto, Infernus said, moving and showing a door was built into his throne. Pass through that door and begin your trials. May the eternal flame gild you, Infernus said. Naruto looked at his mom and Anko, who gave him smiles and a thumbs up which he returned. He then took a breath and walked over to the door and threw it open, revealing the inky darkness. Summing up his courage he plunged headlong into the depths and the door shut behind him. The first thing Naruto noticed were the torches on the wall. They ignited as soon as the door shut behind him, lighting the path forward. He began to walk, unsure where he would end up, but knew he wouldn't turn back. For some time he walked. He wasn't honestly sure how long he followed the cave walls, until finally a light appeared ahead of him. Exiting the tunnel he saw before him was a large open cavern with a waterfall running to one side. In the middle of it was a ring shaped similar to a sparring ring. Standing in the middle was a brown Chinese dragon with long whiskers that wore standard shinobi gear and seemed to be waiting for him. A new summoner candidate. Quite some time it has been since I tested the last, the dragon said. Are you going to give me my first trial? Naruto asked, stepping into the ring. I am indeed, young hatchling. I am Twiken, the master of the Dragon Knight style. If you wish to move on and continue your test, you will need to defeat me in a spar of Taijutsu, Twiken said, slipping into the opening stances of the style. Naruto nodded and bowed to him first as his mother taught him. I would be honored, Master Twiken, Naruto said before doing the same. They stood facing each other for a minute before a breeze passed between them, then they rushed forward. Naruto had spent years fighting against his mother to learn this style, and by her own right she was a master, but nothing could prepare him for fighting a true dragon master of the style. He dodged and weaved through Twiken's punches and kicks and retaliated in kind, aiming for the joints and weak spots of the body to try and uncenter the dragon and give himself the advantage. However, he could not. He twisted and ducked an axe kick and aimed for the master's stomach, yet the strike did not land. Again and again he did everything he could, but to no avail. It was then that he began to notice something odd about the dragon's style. As they moved, Naruto noticed that Twiken's fighting had holes in it, spots that if he decided to take advantage of could truly take the dragon down, but to do so, he would have to break his style, as they were spots that weren't normally aimed for. His mind and body yelled at him to aim for the spots, and he was about to when something in his mind surfaced. Remember Naruto, Dragon Knight style is a style of honor. You do not defeat an opponent by using cheap tricks and hitting places that would be considered unjust. You win by showing your own strength alone, the memory of his mother when he first began to learn the style said. With that thought in mind, Naruto shook his head and pressed on, keeping to his style and ignoring the weak spots. After 20 minutes of sparring, the two broke apart and panted clearly out of breath. My, this is impressive. None have ever lasted this long against me, Twiken Sam with a laugh. Atlas, not without exploiting my openings, he said, shocking Naruto. That's right, young hatchling, I left those spots open to you for a reason. I wanted to see if you would stay true to the way of the dragon or if you would allow yourself to break stance and strike my vulnerable spots, even though they were considered unjust to hit. I am happy to say that because you have passed the first trial, Twiken said, moving so Naruto could pass. Shocked and delighted, Naruto nodded and bowed again. Thank you, Master Twiken. he said before walking forward and watched as the waterfall parted and revealed another cavern. With new vigor he pressed forward. This time no torches lit his way as instead crystals glowed embedded into the walls and showed him the path. Keeping on guard in case something decided to jump him, he moved forward and kept an eye on everything. Again he walked for some time with the crystals lighting his way before another entrance opened and led him into a smaller cavern that glowed multicolor with the colors of the crystals. Unlike before, no dragon waited for him and it seemed as if no one else had entered the cavern in quite some time. This has to be a test of some kind, Naruto thought as he walked in and kept his guard up. He didn't trust some dragon to come out of the wall and attack him. He began to explore the room looking at all the various crystals to see if perhaps one needed to be opened as he didn't see any exit. When that didn't work, he took a glance on the floor and noticed the stone was carved with intricate patterns that all seemed to lead to the center of the room. In the center was a small pedestal with a design of a dragon flying high above the rest of the world on it. Curious, he took a step onto the pedestal and kneeled down to examine it. However, when he did, the lines on the floor glowed and a wall of light shot up, trapping him on the pedestal. Around him the room became pitch black, leaving him standing on the pedestal, unable to move off of it and surrounded by the still visible crystals. "You're such a joke," he heard a voice say and turned to see where it came from. He spotted then a crystal that had the reflection of his mother on it. "Why I even bothered to adopt you that day is beyond me. You're a weak excuse for a shinobi," she said with a sneer. "And you always will be," another said. Turning this time he saw Anko. "You're pathetic moron. Why I'm still friends with you is a mystery. Guess I should finally get over that pity I have for you," the reflection said. Their words cut Naruto deep as he looked shocked and heartbroken by what they said. "You were never even worth our time." This time it was his real father and mother talking from another pair of crystals. "Why waste our lives babysitting you when we had our girls to think of," Kushina said. "You life so much easier by running away. We wished you had done it years ago," Minato said. "How like we would ever want you back." Again this time it was his sisters at his age. "Pushing you away was the best thing we ever did," Naruto told him. "You should just stop playing ninja and grow up," Mito said. One by one the crystals filled with voices of his family, loved ones and everyone who had been in his pasted as they shouted hatred at him and called him everything from loser to weak. Naruto was slowly breaking down, unable to block the voices out, and by now he was in tears. However, the worst had yet to come. Finally, when only one crystal remained, Naruto was on his knees trying to block out the voices and telling himself that what they said wasn't true, but it was hard. "Why did you even pretend it would be any different?" a new voice said, joining the rest. He looked up in shock and saw it was him from 5.5 years ago, dressed like he was the knight he ran away. "You could never hope to get stronger and be a part of that family or any family. You're weak, pathetic, a coward," his younger self said. Naruto couldn't take much more of this. He was ready to give up and just run away when all of a sudden something sparked inside him. A burning fury hotter than he had ever felt fueled his resolve and sank courage in his veins, and then he snapped. "Enough," he roared louder than ever before, and a ripple passed through the images, silencing them and making them look shocked. "I don't care what any of you say. All you are is empty words. You can say I'm weak over and over until your voice breaks and it still won't change a thing," he said, rising to his feet. "Because in the end it's my life, no one else, and I'll see it through to the end. I will get stronger and I'll prove to my family I can be a hero too, and I won't let anyone drag me down with words. So go ahead and keep talking. I'm done listening to, because no matter what I will keep pressing forward," he yelled, now fully standing, his eyes burning passion and courage. The reflections all seemed to smile and one by one faded from view until only the one on the large middle crystal was left. However, it was no longer his 6-year-old form, but an older male 16 surrounded by his family, both halves of his family. "Then you've proven yourself. You've shown no matter what is said to you, what is thrown at you, you'll just keep pushing forward and never let yourself be stopped. You've passed the second trial. Now go and continue to soar higher until you find peace," his older self said before they too faded and the crystal cracked and shattered, revealing a doorway. Smiling, he wiped the tears off his face and moved forward with the new hope of one day making that scene a reality. He pressed onward through the new cave, guided by a glow set in the floor he couldn't explain. Before long, however, the tunnel stopped and he saw a bright light ahead, as well as heard the muffled sound of cheers. Forging ahead, he walked confidently and passed through the light. Shielding his eyes for a second while he adjusted, he then lowered his arm and gazed at newest sight before him. He was in an arena that dwarfed the one back in the Leaf Village by a considerable margin. Filling the stands were dragons of all breed and color, cheering and shouting as he walked into the arena and looked around. Above him on a throne was Infernus himself, gazing down at him with a calculating gaze as he smirked at the yellow-haired boy. "Naruto Kuritori Uzumaki," Infernus said, addressing him and shocking him with the fact he knew his former last name. "You have passed 2 of the trials needed to become a summoner of the Dragon Clan. Now you stand before myself and this crowd for the final test," Infernus said and stood. Reaching next to him, he picked up a large sword made of gold with a design of flames and threw it into the air area, it shrunk as it flew and landed in front of him gleaming wickedly. Take the sword in hand boy for this is your final test. In order to become a full summoner you must kill the previous and take their power, Inferno said. Naruto was horrified and to make matters worse he saw a reflection in the sword. Turning he saw his mother kneeling on the ground bound in chains. It's alright sweetie, go ahead and do it I'm ready, she said. Almost on autopilot Naruto picked up the sword and walked to his mother until he stood over her and looked down. Mom, he said numb and scared. He didn't to do this, but it was like he had to, something in the back of his mind driving him to do it and take the power he needed. It's okay Naruto, I knew this day would come eventually, go ahead I'm ready to go, I want you to have the power, so you can prove yourself to Kushina, Minato, your sisters and all of Konoha, she said closing her eyes. Naruto breathed heavy as he raised the sword, he didn't know why he would do this power was nothing without his mother, that voice in his head screaming at him to do it, but then all the time he had spent with Mira broke through the haze, as he remembered everything they had done, he remembered all the love she had given him and all the things she had shown him, was he really about to give that all up for power? His eyes flashed open as he made his choice, and with a yell he swung the sword down, however the blade did not cleave into Mira and instead impaled the ground in front of her. Forget it, I refuse to take power if it means I become a murderer to the person who loves me. He yelled whipping around and sending a glare at Infernus. Boy choose carefully, continue down this path, and you will never have the power of the dragons, Infernus said, sending a glare right back only with more heat. I don't care, my family will always come before power, he yelled back unwavering. The two stared each other down for what felt like hours as they each tried to break the other, finally a smirk grew on Infernus' face. Dragons of Dorgan plus Kuai give you our newest summoner. Infernus roared as the swarm of dragons burst into cheers and yells of excitement. Wait what? Naruto said quietly since he was confused. Naruto, there are many things we dragons hold in high regard honor, perseverance, bravery, but above all else we hold compassion and loyalty in the highest regards. To a dragon there is no worse come than those who kill for power, and you have just proven yourself better than that, Infernus said smiling at him. He was stunned for a moment before he grew a smile and cheered. He had done it, he had passed the test, he was a dragon summoner. I'm so proud of you, Mira said hugging him from behind. Way to go Naruto, Anko yelled from where she was sat by Infernus' throne. He smiled and hugged his mom back. Now then let a celebration be prepared. Tonight we feast and celebrate, and tomorrow we prepare to train our new summoner in the ways of the dragon, Infernus said, making them all cheer again. Naruto smiled. Tomorrow he would begin his training anew with the dragons. He would get stronger and prepare for what lay ahead in a year and a half time. Look out Konoha cause soon Naruto Kurotori would be home. In the early morning hours outside the gate of the Hidden Leaf village, a pair of gate guards were half asleep in their post, wondering if something would happen. One suddenly looked at the road and squinted. In the distance he could make out 3 figures walking towards the gate, though he couldn't get details. 2 were clearly female however, as he could tell from the way he walked, and the third was male. What was interesting was the male seemed to bob his head and move in an odd way, as if he was hearing a beat, only he could and was moving to it. As they drew closer the 2 gate guards got ready just in case however, when they see who it was they couldn't help but be shocked. Mind if we go in you too? The middle female asked handing them official paperwork that was needed to enter the limits of Konoha. The 2 were just too stunned to say anything, and just nodded letting them in. Their eyes never left the male as they walked. Was that really the same kid we saw all those years ago? Has changed a lot, one said. No doubt about it, that kid is something else, the other said. Back with the trio they were heading in the direction of the Hokage Tower, as 2 of them had business there, however, when they reached a split they stopped. You go ahead to the academy and get your team, the teacher already has all the paperwork from what I sent to Minato, so you will be safe to enter, the lead female said, handing him a headband with a village symbol which the male put on his forehead. Thanks mom, I'll see you after the team selection, the male said before flashing off faster than most could even keep track of. Heads are gonna roll when he gets there, you know that right sensei, Anko said watching as her best friend brother figure zipped away. Though I'm well aware, Hesa Kurotori now we tend to do that, now let's get to the Hokage Tower. I feel like knocking the heads of my idiotic friends. On the other side of the village in the Ninja Academy, students were milling around the classroom talking and waiting for their teacher Iruka Yamino to show up so they could finally be placed on genin teams and begin their ninja career. Among them a young boy by the name of Shikamaru Nara, who was currently fast asleep on his desk while next to him was his best friend. Choji Akimichi was munchkin on a bag of chips. Across the room sat 2 more boys Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburam, were sitting and waiting for the teacher. Above them sat a shy girl by the name of Hinata Hyuga, who looked very nervous around the others and kept glancing over at someone. The other side of the room was packed with girls who at the moment were fawning over a dark-haired boy named Sasuke Chiha, with his 2 leading fangirls, Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruna right in front. However who stood out the most or rather who tried to stay in the back and did were 2 other girls. The 2 were obviously sisters, yet you could tell they had very opposite personalities. An was a blonde with long hair tied up in a set of twin tails that reached surprisingly down to her shoulders and had deep sea blue eyes. She wore a black shirt with with a black and orange coat over it that was unzipped, showing her decent bust size which she was quite proud of. She also wore black spandex shorts and knee guards, as well as a pair of shinobi sandals. The second girl had much shorter crimson red hair and light violet eyes, which were covered by a set of black glasses. Her outfit was more manageable, being a maroon zipped-up coat over a mesh shirt and bra. She wore maroon pants and black ninja sandals as well. The two of them were Naruko and Mito Uzumaki Namikaze, the twin sisters of the current homage, and as of right now they look tired. The two girls had once upon a time been different, full of life and energy like any child should. However, over the years they had changed because of a mistake they made, the mistake of pushing their brother away. Flashback. It was the morning after the twins' 6th birthday and the two of them were still in high spirits after such a fun party the night before, with all their friends and family being there to celebrate with them. Now they were up and out of bed ready to begin the day. The two were heading down to the kitchen when they stopped outside of a door. They knew Wo's room, it belonged to their brother Naruto. The twins loved their brother with all their heart, even though they didn't show it a lot and didn't even realize it. Now however, the two seemed to be thinking over something as they ran downstairs with a curious look on their faces. "Morning girls," Kushina, their mother, said to them as they took their seats at the table. Next to them was their father Minato, who ruffled their hair as they walked by before finishing a report that he had to do. He was very grateful to Mira for the coffee earlier, as it let him get his work done and be with his family. "Morning mom, dad," they said before sitting down and decided to ask their question. "Hey mom, where's Naru?" Mito asked using the old nickname she had for him. "That's probably still asleep from the party last night girls," Minato said, finishing his work and looking at them. The girls then got even more confused. "But dad, Naruto wasn't at the party last night," Naruko said, making her parents stop. "What do you mean? Of course he was, we same him with," Kushina said. However, then she stopped and she went over her memory of the party last night. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she could remember seeing Naruto at the party last night. She frowned and looked at her husband, who was reaching the same conclusion. "I mean, of course he was there, he had to be since he had to unwrap his presents," Minato said. However, his voice sounded off, like it was a question rather than a statement. "Of course, I mean we did get him the what did we get Naruto for his birthday?" Kushina asked. Now she sounded a little scared. Why couldn't they remember getting him a present or anything for his own birthday? They clearly remembered buying the girls a bunch of presents for their shinobi training and other things, but nothing for him. To think of it, what was the last time we saw Naruto? Minato asked. The two looked at each other.